Today on ZZZ Made Easy, we're setting enemies abloom with Vivian. We'll be covering Vivian's main mechanics, how to build her, and some teams she can fit into. This video is made in collaboration with Hoyoverse and uses footage from the creator beta server. Sound effects are not enabled and things are subject to change. Thank you Hoyoverse for the opportunity. Vivian is an S-rank Ether Anomaly agent from Mockingbird. She will provide off-field anomaly application while also being able to re-trigger active anomalies for extra damage. Vivian has a lot going on, from mechanics to multiple move shortcuts and cancels. The main guide will focus on the most important parts of Vivian's kit. At the end of the video, we'll go over some of these smaller details. Let's start with Vivian's basic attack string, which is a 4-part combo. The first 3 attacks with her Hidden Blade do physical damage, and the 4th Parasol Stab does ether damage. After the 4th basic attack, Vivian enters the Noblewoman state. While in this stance, Vivian will automatically dodge the next incoming attack. She can do this once each time you enter Noblewoman state. You know the automatic dodge is available when the Parasol is glowing purple. Now if you basic attack during this state, Vivian will do a Waltz attack. This deals ether damage and Vivian will gain 1 Flight Feather. Waltz has full iframes for its duration. If you do Waltz right before getting hit, Vivian will gain an additional 1 Flight Feather, and this counts as a perfect dodge. Against really aggressive enemies, you can use the automatic dodge to help time your perfect Waltz on the next incoming hit. As the name implies, Flight Feathers allow Vivian to float in the air after certain moves. She can maneuver around and has iframes, but this fluttering frog state only lasts for a short duration. Vivian is meant to basic attack while floating. This downward dive is going to be called Suspension. Suspension has full iframes, and if you swap to another agent, Vivian will actually do this move automatically. While all of this is happening, we need to focus on Vivian's resource bar. Under her portrait, there are 5 circles with inner and outer sections. Flight Feathers are tracked with the intersections, or the dots. The amount of Flight Feathers don't correlate to Vivian's float time or anything. Instead, after she does Suspension, she will convert all held Flight Feathers into Guard Feathers. Guard Feathers are the outer portion of the circle. Once you have Guard Feathers, Vivian can access her standout move, Feather Bloom. After any agent hits an enemy with an EX special, including Vivian, consume 1 Guard Feather and a Feather Bloom attack will trigger on the target. Feather Bloom can only trigger once per EX special skill. Like Bernice's Afterburn, this move can trigger the Ether Anomaly, Corruption, from off-field. I do want to note that Vivian's Suspension move can also trigger Corruption when you swap to another agent. It does use the same flower visual effect, but I don't believe this is counted as a Feather Bloom. This distinction will matter for Vivian's core passive. When Feather Bloom hits a foe suffering from an anomaly, trigger the Abloom effect, which deals additional anomaly damage. This additional damage scales off of Vivian's anomaly proficiency stat, as well as the type of anomaly on the enemy. For each type, you're going to take the percentage shown and multiply it for every 10 points of Vivian's AP. You then take that percentage from the original anomaly damage that was on the enemy. The easiest way to understand Abloom is to do a basic example. For this scenario, Vivian has 300 AP and we are triggering Abloom on a corruption anomaly that is dealing 10,000 damage per tick. First, we're going to divide 300 by 10 to get a 30 times multiplier. For Corruption Abloom, it has a 6.15% value. We're going to multiply that by 30 to get 184.5%. From 10,000 Corruption tick damage, we multiply that by 1.845. This gets us a final Abloom damage value of 18,450. Looking back at the other percentages, these values are different because the varying anomalies have different scaling. For Corruption, Shock, and Burn, these do multiple ticks of damage. Abloom damage is going to be based off of 1 individual tick, which is why they have higher percentages. Conversely, since Assault and Shatter only consist of 1 big damage number, the Abloom percentage is lower. All you really need to understand is that Abloom scales off the active anomalies damage and Vivian's anomaly proficiency. The higher those values are, the more Abloom damage you get. To get active anomalies in the first place, you're going to want Vivian in a double anomaly disorder team. Use EX specials to trigger a ton of Ablooms. We actually aren't done with the core passive yet. There is a second part that states, when Feather Bloom or Suspension hit a foe with an anomaly, inflict Vivian's Prophecy onto the foe. This Prophecy is a damage over time attack equal to 55% of Vivian's attack stat. It's going to happen every 0.55 seconds. The Prophecy dot doesn't scale with AP, but it can crit. However, its true purpose is to trigger the additional damage from Corruption and Shock anomalies. Corruption requires you to hit an enemy every 0.5 seconds. Over a 10-second Corruption, that's 20 ticks of damage. The Prophecy dot makes Vivian incredibly good because realistically you're gonna miss some Shock and Corruption triggers. Enemies will move around, attacks aren't instant, and we aren't robots. The Prophecy guarantees we're gonna get almost all of the tick damages from Corruption. It's a very thematically fitting mechanic for Vivian. Now, the Prophecy Dot will last until the foe does not have an anomaly active. In addition, the core passive is where Vivian gets her 2 Flight Feathers to start a battle with. Finally, we can move on to Vivian's additional ability. She requires an anomaly or ether agent to activate this. Whenever another squad member triggers an anomaly on a foe, Vivian consumes 1 Guard Feather to launch Feather Bloom. This has a 0.5 second cooldown. In addition, Corruption damage and Corruption Disorder damage for the entire team is going to be boosted by 12%, nice and simple. If you pair Vivian in a Disorder team, then her fellow Anomaly allies can trigger their own anomalies, and that's also going to activate Feather Bloom / a Bloom for damage. If an ally uses an EX Special to trigger their anomaly, you're going to see 2 of Bloom procs, 1 from the EX Special use and 1 for the additional ability. We just went over a ton of info, so let's do an overview of Vivian's gameplay loop. First, Vivian needs to generate Flight Feathers. One of the ways to do this is by basic attacking, entering the Noblewoman state, and then doing the Waltz attack. If you do a perfect Waltz right as Vivian gets hit, you can get an extra Flight Feather. After doing Waltz, Vivian's going to enter the Fluttering Frock state, which is where she floats for a short duration, do a basic attack or swap agents for Suspension, and Vivian will convert all Flight Feathers into Guard Feathers. On any EX Special hits or when an ally triggers an anomaly, this will consume 1 Guard Feather, and a Feather Bloom attack is going to trigger extra ether damage. Feather Bloom can also trigger Corruption from off-field. Thanks to the core passive, if Feather Bloom hits a foe with an anomaly, then a Bloom will proc for extra anomaly damage. At the same time, Vivian applies her Prophecy damage over time attack. The Prophecy Dot can trigger Shock and Corruption's anomaly damage. The biggest hurdle to Vivian's gameplay is generating Flight Feathers. As fancy as the Noblewoman state is, with its perfect dodge and parry type gameplay, Vivian has many other ways to get Flight Feathers. Let's do a quick rundown. First, Vivian's EX Special is an ether damage swipe and will grant 3 Flight Feathers. This move has full iframes, and Vivian will immediately start Fluttering Frock, so you can cash in on the 3 Guard Feathers via Suspension. Next, Vivian's Perfect Assist follow-up will grant 2 Flight Feathers. Vivian has the Normal Defensive Assist, which will cost 2 points against stronger attacks, but this is a great way to get feathers and build up Ether Anomaly. After the follow-up, Vivian will also start Fluttering Frock, feel free to do Suspension. If you manage to get a stun off, then Vivian's Chain Attack does good anomaly buildup and will grant 2 Flight Feathers. After this attack, she will be in Fluttering Frock, so when you switch to your next chain attack, Vivian will automatically finish Suspension. Try to send Vivian in early so she can finish Suspension in the background. Last, Vivian's ultimate is a big area effect move that actually has some grouping capabilities. This move does big anomaly buildup and grants the max 5 Flight Feathers. Like the other moves, Vivian will end in Fluttering Frock. It's not a quick assist like Bernice, but you can swap agents to let Vivian finish Suspension while you're attacking with someone else. There are a few useful ways to combo these moves to generate lots of Flight Feathers. The big thing to know is that Vivian can do her EX Special while in the air doing Fluttering Frock. For example, after you do your Waltz and end up in the air, you can directly go into EX Special. Waltz plus the EX Special is going to give you 4 Flight Feathers. If you manage to do the perfect Waltz, then that's 5 feathers. Now, when Vivian goes back into the air after EX Special, you can manually do Suspension. You can also swap out as soon as you press the EX Special button. Vivian will finish the move, plus do Suspension all by herself. We can utilize this aerial EX Special a few more ways. After a chain attack, if Vivian ends up going last, you can do the EX Special. This would give her 5 Flight Feathers. Another option is after a Perfect Assist follow-up attack. Vivian will get 2 feathers from the follow-up and end up in the air. Do the EX Special for 3 more feathers to get the max 5 total. Next, I want to discuss 4 of Vivian's shortcuts / cancels. There are others that aren't as important, so I'll showcase them at the end of the video. First off, Vivian's dodge counter will put her in the Noblewoman state directly. This is fantastic instead of having to do the full basic attack string. Against aggressive enemies, the Noblewoman free dodge will give you some breathing room to time the perfect Waltz attack. For Vivian's quick assist, it's the same as her dodge counter animation. This means it also goes directly into the Noblewoman state. The dodge counter and quick assist into Waltz into Suspension combo is entirely ether damage. It's a nice amount of anomaly buildup if you don't have energy. It's also just got full iframes, and of course you're free to swap out after starting Waltz. While Vivian can automatically enter the Fluttering Frock state after certain moves, we can cancel this as well. One of the best uses of this is after an EX Special. To cancel the Fluttering Frock state, you need to hold the dodge button as the EX Special move is happening. Instead of going into the air, Vivian will instead enter the Noblewoman state, and you can even start the Waltz attack before she fully floats back to the ground. This is quite a useful tech if you're just doing EX Special from standing. Last, if you don't have enough energy but you want to build up feathers, then you can cancel Fluttering Frock after doing the Waltz attack. Once again, you need to hold dodge while the waltz move is happening. Sadly, there's no noblewoman shortcut from this, but it allows Vivian to start basic attacking faster again. More basic attacks means more energy, so it's a good tactic if you have an opening. Even though you can cancel Fluttering Frock, it's a decent way to build up extra anomaly via suspensions, dive attack. The cancels we talked about are good to try and get 5 flight feathers first before doing suspension, but you don't have to always do this. Another tip for suspension is that it can trigger corruption from off-field. This does not require any feather blooms, it just seems to count Vivian as being on-field, kinda like how Astra can trigger corruption while singing. For some general advice, Vivian does seem to have full iframes when she finishes suspension after you swap agents. You don't have to worry about her getting hits. As for the Feather Bloom activations, you may need to adjust your timing when you play your other agents. Since Vivian takes a little bit to finish suspension, she doesn't have guard feathers immediately. This is especially true if you swap early, like during EX Special. Vivian has to finish the EX Special animation, go into the air, then do suspension. If you swap in another agent and they do an EX Special or trigger an anomaly immediately, you might not get the Feather Bloom proc. It's not wasting them, but we need to spend guard feathers efficiently. Like Bernice, Vivian requires some good resource management to get the most out of her. Because Feather Bloom activates on any EX Special hit, it matters who Vivian's teammates are. Low cost energy specials will trigger more Feather Blooms, and having allies with high energy regen can also make the team more comfortable to play. We'll talk about this more in the team part of the guide. First, let's talk about Vivian's build. It's fairly straightforward. She wants a lot of anomaly proficiency, since that's what the Bloom damage scales off of. Naturally, more AP is going to boost Vivian's own corruption damage. Vivian's signature S-Rank Dev engine is Flight of Fancy. It has a 90 AP main stat and grants a passive 40% anomaly buildup rate. When dealing ether damage, you get 20 AP for 5 seconds, and this can stack up to 6 times. You can gain a stack every 0.5 seconds, and repeated triggers will reset the duration. Thanks to Vivian's prophecy dealing damage over time, as long as any anomaly is active, it means Flight of Fancy is going to almost always have its 120 AP bonus. Add that to the 90 AP main stat for an easy 210 anomaly proficiency. For Vivian herself, very simple, very solid signature. Luckily, anomaly agents do have great A-rank options. Weeping Gemini in A-rank craftable will be the main go-to, 25% attack main stat, and you get extra anomaly proficiency for every anomaly trigger, stacking up to 4 times. This bonus is only going to go away until the enemy dies or gets stunned. At Refinement 5, Weeping Gemini gets 40 AP per anomaly. After a few Disorder procs, you can have almost 200 AP. If you don't want to use Weeping Gemini, you can also use Rainforest Gourmet. It has 75 AP as a main stat, which isn't bad, but we can just get more from Weeping Gemini after a few anomaly triggers. Rainforest can grant extra in-combat attack, but you gotta do EX specials. From the Battle Pass, Electro Lip Gloss is fine for a little bit of everything, assuming the enemy has an anomaly active. It also only grants 75 AP max though. For Drive Disc, Vivian would use the generic Anomaly Agent main stats, Anomaly Proficiency in Partition 4, Ether Damage in Partition 5, and then Anomaly Mastery in Partition 6. You could do Energy Regen or percent attack in Partition 6 as well, but I had no issues with Anomaly Mastery. For substats, Vivian just wants more AP and more attack. For her 4-piece set, it was released a little early, but Phaethon's Melody is tailor-made for Vivian. The 2-piece grants 8% Anomaly Mastery. The 4-piece states, when any squad member uses an EX Special, the Equipper gets 45 AP for 8 seconds. If the EX Special user isn't the Equipper, then the Equipper will also get 25 Ether damage. Vivian's Feather Blooms activate on EX Specials, which is why Phaethon's Melody functions the way it does. Naturally, you want allies to trigger Feather Blooms, and that just is going to boost Vivian's AP and Ether damage at the same time. For accompanying 2-piece sets, you can get more AP from 2-piece Freedom Blues or Chaos Jazz. Either one is fine. If you already have a lot of AP, like maybe you have her signature, then you can also use 2-piece Swing Jazz for more energy. More EX Specials means more Flight Feathers on demand. If you have great substat rolls, you could do Chaotic Metal for 10% Ether damage. For teams, Vivian wants to pair up with another Anomaly Agent to create a Disorder team. These are essentially double DPS teams. Vivian's off-field anomaly buildup means you can trigger corruption while other allies work on their own anomalies. If you're familiar with Bernice, then Vivian fills a very similar role of being able to make some smooth Disorder setups. For this section, I want to talk about the 6 other anomaly agents and how I felt they played with Vivian. First up, Jane is being rerun on this same update. She loves dodging with aggressive enemies on field, so naturally she's a good pairing with Vivian. The Bloom extra anomaly damage does take Jane's critical hit assaults into consideration, meaning you can get some big Bloom numbers. Interesting fact, Bloom does its own separate crit check. It is possible for Jane to crit her assault and then the Bloom proc does not hit a crit. Ideally, it shouldn't be happening for a well-built Jane, but it's a funny interaction. For your third agent, the two team attack buffers, Lucy and Astra, are safe bets for any team. They don't really need their addition abilities. For Astra, every time she buffs someone, she will send out her EX special Tremolo. This is how she triggers Featherbloom. For another solid ally, you could use Nicole. She will get her addition ability, which means more ether damage for Vivian, and with a full energy regen build, Nicole can spam EX specials, which means a lot more Bloom procs. Also, since Vivian can finish suspension from off-field, it's a good chance to swap in Nicole to shred defense. Even though her debuffs are short, she has a lot of chances to apply them. For any support agent, you may want to have the quick assist into Vivian. That way, she can enter Noblewoman state immediately. For Nicole, I preferred having her quick assist to the other anomaly agent. Usually, I would let Vivian finish suspension off field while swapping to Nicole to debuff with her basic attack. You can try out different team orders to see what you like best. Moving on, Piper is Jane's A-Ring counterpart, but she plays very differently from Vivian. Piper's EX special spin counts as one trigger for Featherbloom. When she does her really heavy slam finisher, this also counts as another EX special, so Piper can trigger a lot of Featherblooms. As a serviceable on-fielder, I would recommend building Piper if you do not have any other anomaly partners for Vivian. Besides Piper and Jane, there are two strong on-field anomaly agents, Yanagi and Miyabi. Yanagi is an electric anomaly, so she utilizes Shock. Thanks to Vivian's Prophecy ticking on enemies, you can ensure you get the most from the Shock even if enemies escape your reach. Yanagi also specializes in Disorder by empowering them and triggering her own Polarity Disorders. Honestly, it's a bit of a similar mechanic to a Bloom. As for Miyabi, she allows Disorders to charge up her Shimotsuki move. Miyabi has excellent on-field attacks, and as a pseudo-crit damage attacker, she also works pretty good with Nicole. Miyabi and Vivian can swap out early, so Nicole can throw in a quick basic attack to debuff if you don't have energy. Miyabi and Yanagi both have low energy EX special costs. That means more Featherbloom triggers. An interesting team is Vivian and Bernice. Ideally, you kinda want to use the two off-field anomaly agents with different teams. However, Bernice's EX special can be used in short bursts, plus her single and double flamethrower moves count as two separate EX specials. Bernice can probably trigger the most Featherblooms the fastest. It's not the best team, but it's not bad at all. You do need to manage your resources well though. If you need extra fire anomaly, you can use Lucy, and of course try to use your perfect assist to get extra build-up. Last, we have Grace. I think Grace is fine with Vivian, but if you want both Vivian and Grace's addition abilities, you're gonna have to use Rena or Seth as your third ally. Rena is fine, but would prefer M1 for better and longer lasting buffs. Seth can make it easier to inflict anomalies for everyone, but his 100 AP buff is only going to go to one ally for the most part. If you want to run another support, then you can power through without Grace's extra shock damage, but it is a little bit of a shame. Still, with someone like Astra, you can make just about any team work. In general, Vivian is a fantastic as an off-field anomaly, but to get the most out of her, you want allies who can trigger Featherbloom a lot. Piper and Bernice almost trigger it too fast in combination with Disorders, so you do need to adjust based on Vivian's teammates. To end this section, I tried a few non-standard Disorder teams. One of them was a triple anomaly team. This goes into the it can work category, but it's very messy, and anomaly/disorder triggers do have a short cooldown after back-to-back procs. Another team I tried was Juyuin, with Vivian being the activator of Chaotic Metal's crit damage bonuses from the 4-piece. It's a double DPS team, and it can work, but I don't think it was better than the Astra Nicole double support setup. That then got me thinking, well, what if I made Nicole the Chaotic Metal DPS? I've talked a lot about the Astra and Nicole team, but this has made me question if there's like a bug or something. The amount of damage this team puts out is hilarious. With A-Ring W engines and M6 Nicole, I was running with crit rate, ether damage, and energy regen, and simply just played Nicole on field. The funny thing is that this team actually has good AoE, pretty great actually. Vivian doesn't need the OP Astronautical duo to do well, but this was one of the more amusing things I've tried in the game. If you want to get some of Vivian's Mindscapes, M1's going to refund 1 Flight Feather whenever you consume 4 Guard Feathers. Foes with Vivian's Prophecy will also take 16% more damage from all Anomaly and Disorder sources. With Mindscape 1, Vivian gets more Flight Feathers as you consume Guard Feathers. It's a neat bonus if you can efficiently trigger Featherbloom. For Mindscape 2, Vivian gets 25% Ether Anomaly build-up rate. A Bloom's Anomaly Proficiency scaling is also going to increase to 130% of the original amount. Blooms will also ignore 15% of the foe's attribute resistance. Vivian's signature comes with a 40% build-up rate boost and a ton of AP that is easily stacked. M2 is going to make a Bloom stronger for Vivian, but if you aren't going to be spending big, then I would focus on getting Flight of Fancy first. M1 is a nice bonus, but you do need to trigger Feather Blooms effectively to benefit from its Flight Feather refund. If you would prefer to get these Mindscapes, Anomaly agents at least have great W engine options besides their signatures. For the after party tips section, let's talk about some bonus info in a more casual manner. If you really need ether damage to trigger corruption, then you can use Vivian's regular special. Be careful not to use the EX special because it doesn't trigger corruption till the later half of the move. You don't want to waste the anomaly buildup. Since Vivian can finish suspension from off field, you should know that you can't swap back to her until she leaves. However, you can force swap to Vivian via a quick assist. This can be good or bad. You don't want to pull Vivian out of suspension early because she needs to land for it to convert Flight Feathers into Guard Feathers. If you pull Vivian out of the air with quick assist, you might mess up the conversion and then you gotta get back into suspension all over again. Be careful, don't get too antsy with your swapping. To end this video, let's go over all the other shortcuts and cancels in Vivian's kit. You generally don't need to worry about these, but there are uses for them. After Vivian's assist follow-up attack, chain attack, and ultimate, you can cancel the Fluttering Frog transition by holding dodge during those moves. The only reason you would cancel out of Fluttering Frog is if you don't want Vivian to do suspension and convert the Flight Feathers into Guard Feathers. Ideally, you don't want to overwrite old Guard Feathers since it's a waste, but this ties back into having allies who can trigger Feather Bloom efficiently. This cancel option is good, but you shouldn't be overfilling on feathers in the first place, if you get what I mean. With the Fluttering Frog cancel, it makes sense that Vivian has a shortcut back into the air. She can transition to Fluttering Frog earlier by holding basic attack. You can do this shortcut while doing Vivian's 4th basic attack, her dodge counter, and her quick assist. If you have Flight Feathers, then just keep holding the button and Vivian will start flying after those moves. This shortcut skips the Noblewoman state, which generally isn't necessary. Waltz not only does ether damage and grants 1 or 2 feathers, it will put Vivian in the air after anyway. It might be faster to skip this state, but Waltz has a free dodge and full iframes. We can even swap off Vivian early and she can trigger corruption from off field, so it's not a huge deal to get these shortcuts. I can understand cancelling Fluttering Frog and suspension to save up your feathers, but I don't really think skipping the Noblewoman state has a ton of benefits. Overall, Vivian is an exceptional agent. For those familiar with Bernice, she fulfills a similar role as an off-foot anomaly who can pair really nicely with a more on-foot anomaly ally to create smooth disorders. Vivian has a ton of iframe safety in her kit, and there's a lot of potential skill expression to be had. Her teammate choice will matter since some agents trigger EX specials more often. Unspent Guard Feathers means less Feather Blooms, which equals less off-foot ether damage and a bloom damage. Vivian's allies will need to help her out a little, but in turn she's going to provide a ton of ether damage. If you like anomaly agents and you don't own Bernice, then I think Vivian's going to be a very nice addition. She is only the 2nd ether type damage dealer as well, so she can be another consideration for those without Juyu as well. All in all, I did have some high expectations, but I was impressed with how Vivian ended up performing. That's all I got to say about Vivian. Good luck getting her, and hopefully this guide helped you not get blown into the air by all her fancy mechanics. Again, thank you Hoyoverse for the collaboration opportunity, and thank you for watching. I will see you guys in the next video.